You lie still in your bed. The covers are pulled up high, and the night outside your window is soft with darkness. A breeze slips through the cracks in the walls, or perhaps just your thoughts stirring gently like leaves turning in their sleep. Your room feels quiet, quieter than usual, and that quiet invites a story. Tonight we won't visit a grand palace or listen to the roar of soldiers marching beneath towering banners. There will be no golden thrones, no famous kings with unpronounceable names, no maps where great red lines chart the rise and fall of empires. Instead, we'll go somewhere smaller, somewhere quieter. A place history didn't bother to remember. In fact, it forgot it altogether. Close your eyes. Try to imagine a path narrow and earthen curving gently between two low hills. The grass grows thick here, heavy with dew. Your feet make soft, wet sounds as you walk. The morning is pale, almost silver, and there's a scent in the air. Green things growing, something faintly smoky, and something older still like stone warmed by the sun. Far ahead, there's a thin line of chimney smoke rising into the air. You follow it without thinking, and there you see it. A village, small, unassuming, perhaps no more than 15 houses. Maybe 20 if you count the lean-to behind the far barn and the half-collapsed goat shed. But it's real and it's alive. There are chickens scratching the dirt near the road, their feathers dusted and scruffy. A dog trots past, tail-high snout twitching. Someone laughs, a child maybe, and somewhere nearby a door creaks open, spilling warm yellow light into the lane. The houses are made of stone with thatched roofs slumped slightly from the weight of too many winters. Wooden shutters bang softly in the wind. A cart stands abandoned by the well, its wheels muddy, one of them cracked. There's no cobblestone here, just earth flattened by years of footsteps. It is not a place of wealth. There's no inn, no market square, no manor house looming over the cottages. Just a scattering of lives that look a lot like yours might have if you'd been born long ago, in a time when bread was made by hand and nights were lit by oil and fire alone. Let's say this was sometime around the mid-1300s, maybe earlier, maybe a little later. The truth is, no one really knows, and that's part of the mystery. Because this village, as real and as vivid as it is in your mind right now, has no name. Or rather, it had a name once. But that name was forgotten, not written down, not passed on. Lost like a feather on the wind, like a dream you almost remember when you wake up, but not quite. So we'll have to give it a name just for tonight. Let's call it Linmere. Lin for the soft streams that run nearby. Mere for the quiet, shallow lake not far from its edge. Linmere. A name that sounds old and gentle. A name that sounds like it belonged somewhere. Linmere doesn't appear on any modern map. If you scrolled across digital satellite images looking for rooftops or garden walls, you wouldn't find it. If you flipped through dusty county archives, you'd find no census, no land deed, no tax ledger, nothing. But once it was real, and what a place it must have been in spring. Cows lowing in the fields, bees humming lazily over blossoms, children playing with hoops and carved sticks, shouting nonsense words, women kneeling in gardens pulling herbs, a man sanding the edge of a wooden plow with careful hands, no clock towers, no deadlines, just sunrises and sunsets, saints' days, and harvests a rhythm set by the earth. There's a little chapel, just one room with a bell that someone rings every Sunday. It's the only real sound that carries deep and slow, with a voice far too serious for a chapel so small. Still, it keeps time in a world without watches. And inside these homes, imagine small rooms with low ceilings filled with the smells of stew and wool and wood smoke. tables worn smooth by elbows and years, beds stuffed with straw, windows so narrow you couldn't climb through if you tried. People live here, ordinary people, but full of life. The baker's daughter, who sings as she kneads dough. The blacksmith, whose hands are scarred and soot-stained but kind. The old widow who keeps a cat and a secret smile. The children who race down the muddy lanes and dare each other to touch the church bell. These are not people who will be remembered by name. They won't write books or fight in famous wars. But they matter. They live. And like all people, they carry stories that are now gone. Because Linmere didn't last. It vanished. Not in a single dramatic moment. Not in fire or flood. Not even in battle. Its end was quieter than that. A slow forgetting. A fading. First came a silence. Then an absence. Then nothing. And now, centuries later, there's no one left who knows its name. No poems. No ruins. Not even a footnote. And that is the story we will gently unfold together, piece by piece, like lifting moss from a forgotten stone. Tonight, we walk not just through history, but through the soft edges of memory itself, where facts and folklore blur, and where the most ordinary things become the most mysterious. Because Linmere, or whatever its true name once was, didn't disappear in fire. It disappeared in silence. And silence sometimes is even more final than flames. Let's walk a little deeper into Linmere. The sun has climbed just above the hills now, its light stretching long and golden across the rooftops, the fields and the crooked fences that lean at uncertain angles. It's not yet midday, and the village is alive with its gentle rhythms so familiar to those who lived them that they probably barely noticed them at all. You pass a small field on your left where a man is threshing barley. His movements are slow, steady, almost meditative. His shirt is soaked with sweat, his hat fraying at the edges, but he hums quietly to himself. Some tune passed from his grandfather and his grandfather before him. His ox waits nearby, swatting flies with its tail patient as a stone. Farther along, two girls kneel in the dirt, scrubbing potatoes with hard bristle brushes. They laugh together, one teasing the other, by flinging a clod of earth at her sleeve. Their hair is pulled back with simple cords. Their hands are stained and quick. They have done this 1,000 times before, and will do it 1,000 more or so, they believe. You come to the bakery next. Its door is wide open, and inside the warmth is almost overwhelming. The baker's fire has been roaring since before dawn, and the scent of bread drifts through the village like an invitation. Fresh loaves cool on a wooden rack, golden and cracked, each one scored with an individual mark, so the neighbors can tell which is theirs. One is shaped with a tiny cross. Another has a single diagonal slash. Bread isn't bought here. It's bartered, traded, trusted. Everyone knows who's eaten and who hasn't. A small boy stands nearby with a basket. He's barefoot and freckled, and he waits with a seriousness beyond his years. This is his chore, to fetch bread for the family, and he won't leave until he's done it properly. The baker, with her sleeves rolled high and a smear of ash across her cheek, nods to him kindly and slips a warm, round loaf into his basket. He thanks her in a whisper and walks away, gripping the basket like a sacred object. Near the center of Linmere, not that it truly has a center, just a widening in the path, there stands the chapel. Its walls are whitewashed and cracking, its roof patched with care. A single bell hangs in the tower, suspended by iron and prayer. It only rings on feast days, funerals, and certain Sundays. Today it is silent, but still it watches. There's a small graveyard behind the chapel where wildflowers grow between leaning stones. Some names are still visible. Others have worn down to a whisper, or maybe not even that. You don't linger there. The air feels a little too still. Across from the chapel is a house with ivy climbing up the side. An old woman sits on a bench out front, knitting. Her needles click softly like insect wings. A cat naps beside her, fat and spoiled. She sees you, but doesn't speak. Just nods once as if to say, I see you. I know why you've come. But don't stay too long. You wander behind the houses now into the back lanes and gardens. You see chickens, ducks, even a pair of goats. One tries to chew the hem of your cloak. Children peek out from behind hedges. A pair of boys chase a wheel down the slope, yelling in triumph when it crashes into a pile of firewood. No one scolds them. Not yet. This is Linmere on an ordinary morning. No celebrations. No disasters. Just life. And that in itself is rare. Because most of what we remember from history, most of what we write down is not this. We remember the battles, the plagues, the edicts, the coronations. But we don't remember the days when the biggest concern was whether the potatoes were blighted or the goat had wandered too far. No one writes down. On Tuesday, I mended my socks and sharpened the scythe. No one records I was tired. I missed my sister. I wish the rain would stop, but that's what most life is. Quiet, repetitive, human. Linmere was full of this. Full of people who never knew they were living in a story that would one day vanish. They didn't think of themselves as historical. They thought of themselves as hungry, or bored, or late for the baker. And still, this village lived. It had rhythms, festivals, seasons, arguments, courting, laughter behind doors, quiet weeping when someone fell ill, 1,000 small acts of survival and kindness that no one ever noticed because they were just part of it, part of life. And that's why what happened next is so strange. Because one day, not all at once, but not slowly either, Linmere began to go quiet. Not just the ordinary sleepy kind of quiet that settles in at dusk. Not the hush before a storm. A deeper quiet. One without return. But we're not there yet. For now, this moment still lives. The village still stands. The bread is still warm. The ox is still waiting. The bell is still unrung. And you're still walking its paths, still catching the last glimmer of something long gone. So breathe it in while you can. The smoke, the soil, the scent of time drying on the windowsill. Because Linmere, or whatever it was truly called, will not wait forever. Its silence is coming, and soon it will swallow everything. You wake the next morning in Linmere. The dew is thicker than before. It clings to everything, the grass, the doors, even the stones in the road seem damp and glistening. The birds are quieter today. Not silent, just thoughtful, as though they've decided not to speak quite so loudly. Something feels different. You can't say what exactly. The cottages are still standing. The smoke still curls from a few chimneys. The old woman still sits on her bench, though today she knits a little more slowly, and the cat by her side seems restless, twitching in its sleep. The villagers go about their routines, but they do so with a kind of weight. Not panic, not sorrow, just heaviness. Like something pressing softly down on them, something not yet visible. The baker's oven is cooler than usual. Only a few loaves rest on the shelf. She doesn't hum today. She just works in silence, moving through the motions, with hands that know the steps, but not the music. A man walks past with a bundle of firewood. He doesn't greet you. Not out of rudeness, it's as if he simply didn't notice you were there. A child stands alone near the chapel steps, drawing circles in the dust with a stick. She looks up once and then quickly away, as if you reminded her of something she'd rather not remember. And then a sound. the chapel bell. It tolls once. Deep. Measured. You feel it in your chest like a memory you didn't know you had. Not a feast day. Not a wedding. One chime. That means something. You look to the chapel doors, but they remain closed. It tolls again. Someone has died. No one speaks it aloud, but they all know. You see it in the way heads lower just slightly, in the way footsteps slow. A death in Linmere isn't just an event, it's a signal, a kind of shift. The fabric of the village ripples when one thread is pulled loose. You don't know who it was. An elder, a child, no one says. But the bell tells you all you need. Death has entered the village, and it won't leave easily. The rest of the day passes in a hush. The usual chatter at the well is missing. The boys who chased the hoop aren't playing. Even the goats seem subdued. The sun falls behind the hills early, casting Linmere in a gold that feels more like farewell than warmth. Inside one of the homes, you can't tell which someone sings. Not joyfully, just a soft, wavering melody like a lullaby sung for memory's sake. Or maybe for comfort. Or maybe for something else entirely. You find yourself walking the edge of the village past the barley fields, past the narrow stream that glints in the failing light. There's a copse of trees here, twisted yews and hazel, and beyond them a small hollow. It feels older than the rest of Linmere, as though the earth remembers something here that even the villagers have forgotten. You step into the hollow and feel the air grow cooler. The wind stops. The world tightens around you like it's holding its breath. There, half sunken into the soil, is a stone. Not a gravestone, not a monument. Just a rough piece of rock, rounded at the top, half covered in moss. But someone long ago carved something into it. A shape, a symbol. You don't recognize it. Not exactly. But it feels familiar, like it belongs to this place, or like this place belongs to it. The hairs on your arms rise. You step back. Something isn't right. Not just here in the hollow, not just with the stone, with the village, with Linmere. You return before nightfall and find the lanterns lit early one in every window, a sign of worry, of caution. You see faces peering through the slats, not fearfully, but with the watchfulness of people who sense something coming. At the chapel, the doors are now open. Inside, a candle burns low. No body, no priest. Just the candle and the silence. The bell no longer rings, but you hear something else. A cough, then another. From behind a closed door, then two. The air seems thinner, damp, too still for comfort. You step back out, and for the first time you notice no stars tonight. Just a ceiling of cloud, low and heavy. It presses down on the village the way memory presses down on an old man's shoulders. And you understand now without anyone telling you. This isn't just a death. It's a beginning. Or maybe an ending. And it's coming slowly like fog across the moor. No flames, no armies, no declarations. Just a stillness that creeps in gently like sleep until you're too far gone to wake. And you begin to wonder, will they survive this? Will anyone? By the time the next morning comes, Linmere has changed again. It's hard to say how. Everything still looks the same stone walls, the same crooked chimneys, the same little goat bleating somewhere near the old garden wall. But the feeling is different. It's as though the village has blinked. Something small, something invisible is missing, and no one quite wants to speak about it. A woman carries water from the well, but her usual smile is gone. A boy walks ahead of her with a wooden pail, but he doesn't skip. The baker's shutters are still closed, and no warm scent floats through the village. Another house, one by the edge of the woods, has its door shut tight. Smoke no longer rises from its chimney. No voices, no laughter, no sweeping of the threshold. It's simply still. You ask yourself again and again, is this how it happens? A village doesn't vanish with a roar, but with a slow, soft unraveling. A thread here, a silence there, and then one day there's simply no one left to notice. The chapel bell remains quiet. That's what worries you most. At midday, a man passes through the village. He's not from Linmere. That's clear. His coat is heavier stained with the dust of a long road. He walks with a limp, and he carries no cart, no pack, no companions. Just a small bag at his side and a weary look in his eyes. The villagers do not rush to greet him. In fact, most do not come out at all. The man knocks at a door, waits, knocks again. No answer. He moves on. At the well, he pauses. He drinks, rests on the stone edge, and then he coughs. Not once, though. 3 times. He wipes his mouth on his sleeve and moves on down the road and eventually out of sight. No one speaks to him. No one stops him. But the silence that follows his footsteps lingers long after he's gone. That evening, another candle burns in the chapel. Still no ceremony, still no priest, just the flame. Quiet, watching. You see the old woman again, the one who always sits knitting. But she's not on her bench. She stands instead, slowly picking herbs from a window box. Her movements are careful. Her lips are moving as though in prayer, or habit, or memory. The cat is gone. The night that follows is colder than it should be. Not just in temperature, but in spirit. Fewer lights shine through the windows. No songs are sung. The wind whistles down the chimney, and no one stirs to block the drafts. You lie awake for a long time, wondering what's changed, or if perhaps everything has changed, and the village is simply pretending not to notice. When you finally sleep, your dreams are full of stillness, no voices, only stone and ash. And in the morning, another house is empty. This one closer to the well, a home with yellow shutters and a carved heart on the door. You remember the woman who lived there. She made cheese. She used to call to the children when they passed her fence. Her dog barked at everyone but never bit. Now the shutters hang loose. The heart on the door is faded. And the dog is gone too. Someone says the woman left in the night. But you don't believe it. There's nowhere to go. Not really. And that is when you begin to understand something about Linmere. It is not just disappearing from the world. It is disappearing from memory. Even the people who remain, they don't talk about the missing. They don't speak their names. They don't ask questions. It's as if each absence smooths itself over like water closing in after a stone is dropped. You try to ask the old man who carved spoons, remember him? He always nodded kindly when you passed. But today, when you ask him if he knew the woman from the yellow-shuttered house, he frowns, shakes his head. Don't think there ever was a house like that, he mutters. Then he goes back to carving. His hands tremble slightly. His spoon has no shape. The next few days blur. One house, then another. Some locked, others left open. A boot in the doorway. A pail tipped over. A cup still full on the table. And fewer people in the lanes. Fewer voices at the well. The children no longer play. The chapel bell does not ring. And the stone in the hollow, it's no longer there. Only a patch of disturbed earth. And the faint impression of something curved. You're not sure when it vanished. You only know that it has. And now the name Linmere feels strange in your mouth, like it doesn't quite belong, as if you made it up or borrowed it from a dream. You look down the path that leads away from the village. It is overgrown now. The wheel ruts are fading. The trees are closing in. And you wonder, truly, wonder if you turned away, if you walked for even a few minutes and turned back again. Would Linmere still be there? Would you remember where it stood? Would you remember anything at all? The path you once knew is fading. It used to be so clear, the curve around the hedgerow, the spot where the roots from an old ash tree poked through the dirt. But now it's harder to see. The grass has grown up, and the earth is soft again, like it's trying to heal itself, like it's trying to forget that footsteps ever passed here. And in a way it is. You try to retrace your steps to walk back into Linmere, but something is changing around you. The hedgerows are taller. The fences you remember are gone. That lopsided gate that always creaked in the wind has vanished. Even the sound of the village, the cluck of hens, the bleating of goats, the familiar knock of someone splitting wood has melted into quiet. And when you reach the place where the village should be, you stop. There's nothing. No cottages, no chapel, no smoke, no footsteps, just grass. A field damp with morning dew, mist curling low to the ground, birdsong faint and far off. You step forward, heart tightening. You walk the ground where the road should be, where the well should have stood. You spin in place. Look left, look right. No rooftops. No doors, no shutters. You take another step, and suddenly your memory is not so sure. Was the chapel to the north? Or was it east, where the houses stone or timber? Did the old woman knit scarves or socks? Did she even exist? You pause again. And now you can't quite remember what the village was called. It was Linford, Linsmere, no. Something softer. Linmere. Yes. Or was it? You whisper the name aloud. It doesn't sound right anymore. It slips out of your mouth like something half-dreamed, like something you never really knew. And that's when you feel it, the soft, aching truth of it all. The village didn't just vanish from the land. It vanished from memory. From yours. From everyone's. No records, no ruins, no graves with legible names, no stories passed down embroidered into family lore. The people of Linmere, if that was ever truly its name, lived ordinary lives. They worked, they loved, they aged, they died. And then the world forgot them. Completely. And now you are the last. The only one who remembers the bakery with its sun-warmed bread, the bell that tolled only once, the boy with the basket, the girl who sang to the cows, the chapel candle. But even your memories are slipping. What color was the cat, gray or white? What herbs did the old woman pick? How many houses were there? You close your eyes. You try to see it all again, to walk its paths in your mind. But it's like trying to catch smoke. Images rise, then dissolve. Voices echo and then vanish. And slowly, gently, the village disappears from you too. Not in panic, not in sorrow, but in that strange, inevitable silence that comes for everything too small, too quiet, too ordinary for history to hold on to. And you begin to understand something simple and strange and heavy. Most of history is not made of kings. It is not made of battles or bloodlines. It is made of people like the ones who lived here. People who dug in the soil and burned their fingers on hot bread and kissed their children goodnight. People who left no mark except the warmth they gave the songs. They hummed the goats they fed. They are the threads beneath the grand tapestry, the parts no one sees but without which the picture could never hold together. But those threads fray, and sometimes they're lost. You sit in the grass a while where the chapel once stood, or where you think it stood. The ground is soft. A single yellow flower presses its way up toward the sun, nodding gently in the breeze. You could leave now. You could walk away and never come back, and the world would not notice. But maybe, just maybe, there's one thing you can do. You can remember, just for a while longer. You can say the name even if it sounds wrong now. You can recall the boy with the hoop, the warm bread, the chapel candle that burned in silence. You can keep that little hollow in your mind, the one with the stone that's no longer there. You can remember that once somewhere there was a village, and it mattered, even if no one remembers it now. You rise from the grass, brushing your hands against your tunic, or perhaps only in your memory, for you're not even sure now if this is a dream or something older, deeper folded into your bones. You walk slowly, unsure whether you're stepping through the past or into a place that no longer exists at all. The air is heavy but still. The mist has thickened, rolling low across the field where the cottages used to stand. And then a sound. A bell. You freeze. One clear, hollow note carried on air that smells faintly of old wood smoke and time. You turn toward it instinctively, the way a child turns toward a mother's voice in a crowd. It's distant, but unmistakable, a chapel bell. You know this bell. You've heard it before. You've felt its echo in your ribs. It has rung for lives and deaths, for joy and warning. But it should be silent now. There is no chapel anymore. No bell tower. No rope to pull. No hands left to pull it. And yet it rings again. You begin to walk toward the sound, though you don't know how. There is no road, only tall grass and vanishing paths. But your feet remember the way. The earth itself seems to lean beneath you, guiding your steps forward. You crest a small hill and see it a shape in the mist. A building. Simple, square, whitewashed, just as it was. The chapel, intact. You blink. For a moment, just one moment, Linmere is back. Not all of it. Just enough. The chapel. A flickering light within. A familiar crooked fence half buried in the ground. A bucket hanging beside the door. You step forward, unsure if it's real, unsure what real even means anymore. The mist parts slightly, revealing the old bell tower, its little bronze crown still hanging in place. The bell sways once more, then stills. Silence follows. Inside, there's only a single candle burning in a small iron holder near the altar. Its flame is low but steady. There's no one here. No priest. No widow. No bread. No boots. No hymns. Only this, a final place of memory holding on in defiance of the forgetting. You sit down on the chapel bench, the one that used to creak, though now it does not. You run your fingers along the wood. It's cool and smooth, worn by hundreds of hands before yours. And it's here that you begin to feel it, not sorrow, not fear, but something softer. Grief. Not because something terrible happened, but because something beautiful once existed, and now it's gone. You imagine the last person who rang the bell. Were they afraid? Were they sick? Did they know no one would come after them, or were they simply following a rhythm, one last note for one last life, echoing into a valley that was already forgetting its own name? You sit a while longer. You listen to the silence. And slowly, slowly, even the chapel fades again. Not with a snap, not all at once, but gently, like fog lifting from a meadow. The wooden bench becomes cool earth. The candle becomes the sun filtered through mist. The bell tower becomes the sound of your own breathing. And the door, well, the door is gone entirely. You're sitting in a field now. Just grass and trees and wind. No walls, no roof, no altar. Only you. And the memory of something that refuses just for this moment to be fully lost. You place your hand on the ground where the chapel once stood. It's soft, damp, alive. Something might grow here again, wildflowers perhaps, or nothing at all. But for now, it's enough that you remember, that you heard the bell, that you walked the road even when the road no longer existed. Because somewhere in the great folds of time, someone has to remember the places that have no monuments, the stories with no ending, the people who were loved but not written down. And maybe, just maybe, this moment is the final toll of the bell. Not one of sorrow, but of remembrance. The air is still now. The mist has thinned, the fields lie quiet, and somewhere high above a bird sings just once a short, clear note, and then silence again. You stand slowly, the feeling of the earth lingering in your hand. It's cool and alive. The kind of soil that remembers what it holds, even if no one else does. You turn toward the trees, back toward the hollow. You didn't mean to return there, but your feet move without asking. The way one returns to a place not for answers, but because you need to know that something still exists. That even if everything is lost, the shape of it remains. The hollow looks smaller now. Or maybe you've grown. The trees surrounding it are tall and close, their limbs curved inward like old monks at prayer. Their leaves murmur in the breeze, not speaking exactly, just remembering. You step between the trunks and descend into the hollow. And there it is. The place where the stone once stood. The earth is disturbed, still not recent, but not healed either. Something was buried here, or something was unearthed. You can't say which. You crouch beside it, pressing your hand into the damp moss, letting your fingers sink gently into the green. And suddenly, an image flashes in your mind, not like a memory you lived, but one that belongs to the land itself. A figure kneeling, a pair of hands smoothing the soil, a breath held, then released. And then darkness. You draw back slowly. You're not afraid. Not quite. But the weight of it is real, the feeling that something ended here. Something final. Maybe a burial. Maybe a vow. Maybe the very act of forgetting itself. You glance around. There's no marker. No carving. No symbol now. But you know this place is important. You feel it in your chest, in the strange pressure behind your eyes. Not sadness. Something else. That strange, holy ache you feel in ruins or in dreams that wake you with your heart pounding, though you can't say why. You rise and walk the edge of the hollow. Your eyes catch small things, a tuft of wool caught on a branch, a rusted nail curled like a sleeping beetle, a fragment of red clay half swallowed by roots. Nothing you could take, nothing you could show. But they are enough to tell you people were here, and now they're not. And the world has closed in over their absence. You look back down into the hollow. If someone were to pass this place now, they'd see nothing. Just moss, leaves, a dip in the ground. They'd walk on, and Linmere, or whatever it was called, would vanish just a little more. But you pause. You reach into your pocket. You don't know why. There's nothing there, or so you thought. But your fingers brush something. A smooth stone, rounded, warm. You lift it to the light. It's just a stone. Ordinary. But it feels like it belongs here. You crouch again. Press it gently into the earth where the old marker once stood. Just enough to keep it steady. It won't last forever. Time will claim it. The moss will take it back. But for now it stands. A tiny marker, a whisper against the silence. You don't speak. There's no prayer for a forgotten place. No hymn for people without names. So you close your eyes and listen. And in that stillness, for just a moment, you hear them. Not voices exactly, but echoes. The creak of a wheelbarrow, the laughter of children, the ring of the chapel bell, the chop of firewood. A mother humming as she braids her daughter's hair. Tiny scattered pieces of lives that once filled this place like firelight fills a room. And then nothing. Only your breath. Only the trees. Only the hollow. You rise one last time. And you turn away. You will not return here again. Not because it doesn't matter, but because you've done what needed doing. You remembered. And that for now is enough. You walk now with something different in your chest, not quite peace, not quite sorrow, just the weight of remembering. The sun has broken through the mist in places. Its light glints off dew-wet leaves catching in the high branches like fragments of stained glass. The trees thin, the path opens, and soon you're standing where once there was a road. But there is no road now. No track of cartwheels. No muddy footprints. Only wild grass and a few birds startled by your steps. You pause at the crest of a hill. You turn and look behind you. And there's nothing. No village. No chapel. Not even the hollow is visible from here. It has vanished behind the rise, behind the trees, behind the centuries that came to swallow it whole. And yet it lingers not as a place, but as a question. A question that history refuses to ask. Because if you went to the archives in the nearest town, let's say the kind kept in high towers or dusty church vaults, you would find no mention of Linmere. No land deeds, no tax records, no names of families, no parish books full of births and burials. Even maps from the old days, the delicate kind drawn with quill and ink, full of tiny hills and rivers like silver veins, do not mark it. There is a gap, a blank space where something should be, and the map makers at some point simply drew over it. A woodland here, a pond there, a road curving just a bit too far to the east, as if the land itself had rearranged its face to forget. But the thing is, places don't forget on their own. We forget them. Because history has always had a sharp eye for the loud things, the victories, the cathedrals, the crowns. It likes parchment and witnesses. But Linmere, if it ever truly bore that name, left behind nothing that could be catalogued. No relics of royalty. No relics at all, really. Just lives. Soft ones. And lives, when not written down, when not declared, have a way of fading faster than stone. And so in time the map forgot. First the village, then the path, then the name. Even the very idea that something had once been there. And the people. They were folded into the silence like threads into cloth, invisible but still part of the weave. You step off the hill and continue your walk. Down the slope, toward wherever history did take the time to remember. You imagine a scholar many years from now poring over ancient records, compiling footnotes and fragments. They pause, frown, tilt their head. There's a gap, a strange hole in the records. No mention of anything in that valley for over 100 years. Curious, they write, but not curious enough. Because how do you research what no one recorded? How do you prove a memory? You reach a small bridge, moss-covered, spanning a narrow stream, and you realize something. Even though no maps marked Linmere and no books preserved its name, there are still traces, quiet ones if you know how to look. A garden wall buried beneath ivy, a yew tree standing in a place that doesn't quite make sense, a lone daffodil growing in perfect rows in the middle of a forest. Someone planted that once. Someone watered it. Someone cared. And though the map forgot the land, remembers not with names, but with patterns, with little ghost echoes, and with people like you who stop and notice, who hear something in the wind and ask, what was here before? Who sit beside an odd bend in the road and wonder, who lived here? Who loved here? Who listened for the bell that no longer rings? You cross the bridge. The path continues. Behind you, Linmere slips further away. But it isn't lost, not entirely. Because tonight, as you lie in bed, your mind will return to that green hollow, to the smell of bread, to the sound of children, to the cool earth where the chapel stood. And for a little while longer, in this one quiet corner of the world, it will live again. Just enough to matter. Just enough to remind us not all stories need monuments. Some just need to be remembered. As you continue walking, the trees part a little more, and the world feels wider again. The hush of Linmere fades behind you, not entirely, but gently, as though it's decided not to follow too closely. The wind picks up. You hear birds calling from the branches above. Sparrows, blackbirds, and one long, mournful note from a dove hidden somewhere out of sight. And for a moment you wonder, do they remember birds see everything after all? They don't care for names or maps. They live among rooftops, hedgerows, and chimney pots. They watched Linmere long before it vanished. They saw the lives begin end and slip into stillness. They don't write books, but perhaps they carry stories in their flight. A magpie swoops past you, close enough to feel the rush of wind from its wings. It glances back just once, then it's gone. You keep walking. It's odd how quickly the world moves on. Just a few fields away, the landscape is different. A larger road, a thatched barn, a pair of oxen chewing lazily in the distance. Somewhere someone is singing a work tune. It drifts toward you, carried on the breeze like something uninvited. You pause, listening. This village, not Linmere, but another, is marked on the map. It still has a name. It has records. It appears in documents and diocesan rolls. It was lucky, perhaps, or better protected, or simply more useful to someone with a pen. But even here you sense the edges of forgetting, because one day even this village may fade too. One by one the houses will sink, the names will blur, the songs will be sung by fewer and fewer mouths, and then, poof, gone. Except perhaps for a yew tree, or a single bell that someone someday might ring without knowing why. And isn't that the strangest part? That even when the people are gone and the names are dust, something lingers. You once read about a shepherd who refused to pasture his sheep in a certain field, even though no one could say why. No records, no ruins, just a feeling. A story passed to him as a child. He said the ground wasn't right there. The sheep knew it too, apparently. They always stayed close to the edge. And years later, someone discovered that beneath that field were the stones of an old chapel. No cross, no altar, just a foundation. But the memory had lasted not in the mind, but in the body. In the paths the sheep would not walk. In the habit of a man who couldn't name what he remembered. So maybe that's what remembering truly is. Not holding on to details, but holding on to meaning. To the feeling that someone was here, that something mattered. You reach a stone wall now low crumbling and covered in lichen. It rings a small pasture like a necklace grown too tight. A bird perches on the wall. It watches you. And suddenly you remember something odd. In Linmere, there was a boy who used to whistle to the birds. You never heard his name. Maybe you imagined him. But he'd sit near the chapel, tossing crumbs and mimicking their calls. The birds would come one by one, and they never feared him. What was his name? Thomas Tommy. No, it's gone again. But you remember the image of him. His eyes wide, his hair sticking up, a crust of bread in one hand, and in the other a tune. Maybe one of these birds is descended from the birds that came to him. Maybe they still fly over that valley sometimes, sensing a silence where sound once was. And perhaps when they do, they pause, just a beat, just long enough for the wind to whisper through their feathers, and they remember, not with names, not with sorrow, but with something simple and wild and true. You keep walking. The sun is dipping lower now, painting the grass in long gold streaks. You feel the weight of the walk in your legs. You wonder how long you've been out. Time seems different when you walk through memory. A milestone appears ahead, carved, worn, mossy. It lists 3 towns. None of them are Linmere. You rest your hand on it, close your eyes, and for a moment, you picture the village again. The chapel, the hollow, the scent of wood smoke, the hush before the bell. And in that moment, it exists again. Just for you. Just long enough. Because maybe that's all memory is. Not preservation, but resurrection. You've wandered far now, farther than most maps stretch, farther than memory likes to follow. But something inside you still tugs you backward toward that place no one remembers. Not to return exactly, but to hold on to what little remains. Because even the deepest forgetting leaves traces. You stop at a clearing. It seems ordinary at first, a quiet patch of grass ringed by trees, the kind that could be any meadow in any countryside. But then you notice the way the ground is uneven. Gently sunken in some places, small rises in others, as if the earth has been stitched over something buried deep, and then it hits you. This was a graveyard. Linmere's, perhaps, or some other village just as lost. There are no stones, no carvings, no names, just hollows in the ground softened by centuries of rain and root. You kneel. Brush your hand across the grass. Nothing rises to meet your fingers, no engraved letters, no tokens, no relics, but you feel something, a presence, a stillness that is more than silence. Because someone stood here once grieving. Someone knelt and prayed. Someone whispered names we'll never know. It's not the kind of graveyard made for legacy. No family crests. No ornate markers. Just the simplest human act, the laying down of one body by another, and the hope that something would remember it. But now even the memory is missing. You wonder if the people buried here were ever mourned again after that first year. If their names were spoken by grandchildren. If the ground was ever tended, or if it faded quickly into forgetfulness once the village vanished. Maybe the last person to stand here tried to remember all the names. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe they stood alone with a list in their heart, reciting it like a prayer, until the names ran out, and the silence answered back. It's strange, isn't it, how quickly people pass from being someone to being no one. A single generation can do it. 2 if they try hard. 3 if they don't care at all. And what happens then? Does the person vanish? Or do they live on in the trees that grew over their resting place, in the birds that still circle above, in the rare stranger like you who kneels in the grass and listens, you look up. The sky has changed again, clouds stretching like cloth across the light, dimming the day with a soft, silvery hue. You imagine a child long ago visiting this same graveyard. Perhaps they came to leave a flower, or to ask the grave a question. or just to sit beside someone they missed? Did they know how easily that memory would be erased? Did they know they were part of the last echo? You walk slowly now, weaving between the dips in the earth. You speak no words. There are none to say. But still you feel something in the air. Gratitude, perhaps. Or simply awareness. As if the ground knows someone is here. Someone is noticing. You find a tree near the edge of the clearing, an ash twisted and tall. Its bark is scarred with old knots. One branch dips lower than the rest, almost like an arm reaching outward. You rest beneath it. The trunk is warm from the sun. You lean your head against it. And in that moment, the graveyard breathes. No wind, no sound. But something shifts gently, as though 100 sleeping memories stirred, just a little, sensing your presence. They don't ask for anything. They don't need to. You're already giving them what they want: to be seen, to be felt, to not be completely gone, even if you can't give them names, even if you can't tell their stories, even if this place will never be marked on a map again. You close your eyes, and in the quiet, you see them. Not clearly, not like photographs, but like impressions left in soft clay. A woman kneeling beside a grave. A boy clinging to her dress. A man laying down a carved stone. A priest with shaking hands. And then nothing. Just grass. Just you. Just time rolling onward. You rise again. You press your hand once more to the bark of the ash tree. And you make a promise, not aloud, not formal, but deep inside where promises really live. You promise that even when you leave this place, you will not forget. You will carry its quiet with you. And the world, for just a little longer, will carry Linmere and all the villages like it through you. You turn from the clearing, and the graveyard slips back into stillness. But not quite silence. Not anymore. You walk onward through the countryside, the sun behind the clouds, now casting a light that feels like parchment, thin, pale, delicate. The kind of light that makes you feel like you're walking inside a story rather than beside it. You find yourself thinking about books. Not the kind you read in the quiet of your room now, but the books once kept in small stone churches. The kind bound in cracked leather and iron hinges tucked behind altars or beneath pews. The kind that bore witness. Parish books. The quiet record keepers of the forgotten. They didn't tell stories, not really. They listed lives, line by line. Who was born? Who was wed? Who died? When the frost came early. When the mill collapsed. When the plague knocked on the door, and who it took with it. They were written in cramped hands, often by tired men who had seen too many faces come and go. Sometimes the ink faded, sometimes the hand trembled, but still the names were written down. And that was enough. To be recorded was to be real. To be written was to be remembered. You stop beside a weathered oak tree, its bark deeply grooved, its roots pushing up from the earth like ribs. You sit down in the hollow, where its trunk curves, and close your eyes. You try to picture the parish book of Linmere. Try to imagine what it might have looked like. Its cover would have been plain, nothing ornate. Just worn leather darkened by years, and the touch of hands who believed that writing down a name meant something sacred. Inside pages the color of cream, the corners curled, the ink smudged. And on those pages, baptized Joan, daughter of Will, in the second week of March. Buried John, son of Thomas, taken by fever in his 12th year. Married Anne to Robert under God and witness. Simple lines, but behind each one a world. Behind each one a voice, a face, a story. And then one day the entries stop. No explanation. No final note. just a blank line, and then nothing. You imagine the priest who wrote them. Perhaps he fell ill himself. Perhaps he fled. Or perhaps he stayed until there were no more names left to write, and then closed the book for the last time. Did he bury it? Leave it on the altar. Hide it beneath a floorboard. Was it burned, lost? Was it ever real? Maybe not. Maybe there was no parish book at all, but the idea of it lingers. The hope that someone cared enough to write it down. That someone understood that a name on a page was a small resistance against the dark tide of forgetting. You open your eyes and realize that in your mind you've already begun writing the book yourself. Not with ink, but with memory, with fragments and feelings, with the scent of wood smoke, the curve of a lane, the sound of a bell, the hollow in the earth. You don't know their full names. You don't know their precise dates, but still they're real to you. And if they are real to you, perhaps that's enough. Perhaps the world needs more books like that. Ones without perfect records. Ones built from whispers and footprints and echoes. You rise, brushing bark and leaf from your clothes. You feel the ache of the walk in your knees, the weight of memory in your shoulders. But you also feel something steadier now, something rooted. You look down at your hands. They are empty, but not without purpose. Because every name you remember, every story you hold, even the broken ones, becomes a page. And the parish book begins again, not in a chapel, but in you. You step back onto the path. Ahead, the road stretches like a ribbon laid loosely over the hills. Somewhere far off, someone is hammering wood. Life goes on, unaware, unworried. But behind you, back in the mist, something is quieter now. Something is at peace. And the pages, though invisible, are turning. By now, you've walked far from where Linmere once stood, or where it might have stood. The road beneath your feet feels firmer, more certain. There are clearer paths here, better kept fences, and the occasional sound of someone chopping wood in the distance. The world feels awake again. And yet, you carry something with you now, a sliver of the forgotten. A thin, soft thread tied around your thoughts, one end looped somewhere deep in the past. You pause at the edge of a grove where the trees grow older than the villages nearby. Their trunks twist upward like question marks. Their roots bulge through the soil like sleeping animals. You step inside, drawn by instinct more than choice. It's quiet here. The birds don't sing. The wind barely moves. And yet it doesn't feel unfriendly. Only solemn. You walk among the trees, slowly letting your fingers graze bark as you pass Elm Beach ash. Some older than any church still standing. Trees that have seen more than they remember. Trees that have forgotten more than we'll ever know. And then just at the base of one great oak, you see it. A stone, small, sunken, no more than a handspan tall, hidden beneath a drift of dry leaves and creeping moss. You crouch beside it, brushing it gently. There's no writing, no carvings, only the sense that this isn't just a stone. It's a marker of something or someone. And beneath it, earth that seems to hum. You press your palm to the ground. There's no sound, but the silence is thick, full, listening. And in that silence, you wonder, what would it be like to be remembered only like this? No monuments, no books, only a tree that grew over you and a stranger's hand pressing gently against the soil. Would that be enough? Would it feel like being found? You sit back on your heels, and your mind drifts, not to battles or kings or chronologies, but to faces, impressions. Ghosts of people who never asked to be remembered only to be loved in their own time. A woman lifting a child into her arms. A boy hiding from chores behind a chapel wall. A man watching rain through a wooden window, hands still smelling of wheat. None of them left behind great acts, just quiet ones. Feeding, tending, waiting, forgiving. You open your eyes. The forest is still around you. But in the stillness, there's something more now. A presence. Or maybe just a feeling that this place, and perhaps hundreds like it, are not as empty as they seem. Because a place doesn't vanish when no one remembers it. It vanishes when no one visits it. When no one stops to say something happened here. And today you have. You place your hand on the stone once more. You don't know who lies beneath it. You never will. But you say thank you. Quietly. Not aloud. Just with your breath. Just with your presence. And that is enough. You stand your legs stiff, your shadow long on the leaves. You walk back to the edge of the grove one step at a time until the trees begin to part. And you don't look back. Because you know now. You don't need to see it again to carry it. Some things live in the mind. Others live in the heart. And some, the oldest, the softest, live beneath the roots, waiting, not to be found, just to be remembered. You've left the grove behind. Omo. Now the whispering trees, and the stone tucked in its bed of moss. The road feels wider, though no one walks it but you. And far ahead, you spot a figure. A shepherd. He's standing alone on a hill, wrapped in a woolen cloak, leaning on a crooked staff. His flock grazes lazily behind him, scattered white blots on a field of green. A dog lies curled nearby, one eye open, always watching. As you draw closer, he turns to you, not startled, not unkind, just curious, as if he doesn't often see strangers walking this way. You greet him, and he nods in return. His face is tanned from years beneath the sky. His beard is short and gray, his hands calloused. You ask him gently, casually, if he's lived here long. He chuckles. All my life, he says. And my father's, and his before him. You nod. And then, because the question's been burning behind your teeth all day, you ask about the valley beyond the grove. The quiet one. The one where nothing stands anymore. His brow furrows. He glances toward it, though he doesn't turn his head. That place, he says slowly. Ain't much there. Just trees. Bit of bog. Sheep don't like it. You press a little further. Was there ever a village there, a chapel, a well? He frowns deeper now, scratches his cheek. Can't say he mutters. Old folks used to say something was there. Used to call it. He trails off. I don't remember. He's quiet for a moment. Then he adds, funny though. Every time I walk past that hollow, I feel like I should tip my hat. Don't know why. Just do, you smile. Not because it's funny, but because it's perfect. That's how memory survives. Not in details, in gestures, in instincts. In a man who can't recall a name but still tips his hat toward a valley no one remembers. You thank him, and he nods again. He offers you a bit of bread from his pouch. You take it and sit with him a while. No talking. Just the wind, the sheep, the sky. Before you leave, he says, people think things are gone when they're not on the map anymore. But maps don't know everything. You glance at him. Maps never knew everything you say. He grins. You thank him again. And as you walk on, you glance back once, not at the valley, but at the man, still watching the hills, still tipping his hat to shadows, still remembering nothing, and somehow everything. The sky is deepening now, turning that soft, sleepy blue that comes just before dusk. The light is gentler, the wind quieter. Even the birds seem to chirp more slowly, like they too are winding down. You follow the road as it curves through a narrow stretch of trees, their branches meeting overhead like old hands clasped in prayer. And then just as the woods open again, you see it, a house. Small, crooked, standing alone on a rise like a question that hasn't been asked in a very long time. It's not grand. It leans slightly to one side and its roof is patched with moss and time. One shutter hangs at an odd angle. The path leading up to it is overgrown, nearly swallowed by grass. But it's there, still standing. You approach slowly, unsure why. Maybe it's just the pull of something familiar. Or maybe something about the house calls to you, not with a voice, but with a kind of quiet hope, like it's been waiting. You reach the door. The wood is weathered, but not broken. You knock. Of course, no one answers. You try the handle. It opens. The hinges creak, not loudly, not ominously, more like a yawn than a warning. You step inside. Dust motes dance in the air, caught in a beam of light from a high, narrow window. The room is small. One table, 2 stools, a fireplace with cold ashes, a wool blanket folded neatly on a bench. Everything here is still, not abandoned, just paused. You run your fingers along the table. A fine layer of dust clings to your skin. But beneath that dust, the wood is smooth, worn by years of elbows and bread and laughter and grief. You find a cup on the shelf, a spoon in the hearth, a child's toy carved from wood sitting alone beneath a stool. You sit gently on the bench, and for a moment, a heartbeat, a breath, you can imagine someone just stepped out for water, or into the woods for firewood, or simply went walking and got lost in thought. Because this house doesn't feel empty. It feels waiting, as though it knew someone would come, eventually. And maybe it wasn't looking for someone who knew the names or the stories or even the village that might have once surrounded it. Maybe it just wanted someone to open the door again, to let light fall across the floor, to breathe once more inside its quiet. You rise and walk through the single narrow doorway into what must have been a sleeping room. The straw mattress is thin but tidy. A wool tunic hangs from a wooden peg. A cracked mirror leans against the wall. You look into it, and you see yourself. But behind your reflection, you think just for a moment you see something else. A flash of red ribbon, a girl's braid, the flicker of a candle. But when you blink, there is only you. You smile at yourself just a little, because you understand now. The house was never waiting for its people to return. It was waiting for someone to carry them forward. And now you do. You step back into the main room. You place your hand on the hearth. You whisper a word, not one you understand fully, but one that feels right. A farewell, maybe, or a promise, or both. Then you step outside again. The sun is nearly gone now, casting long gold across the grass. The house stands behind you, quiet as ever, unchanged. But now it feels lighter, like a page that's been read again after many years. Still old, but no longer forgotten. You turn from it, your feet soft on the path, and you walk once more into the dusk. Dusk has folded itself fully over the land now, and you walk beneath a sky turning slowly to indigo. The trees are behind you. The crooked house is gone from view, and ahead stretches only open road and above a dome of deepening dark. You pause, not from weariness, but wonder, because the stars are beginning to appear. One by one, shy at first, then bolder, until the heavens seem to fill with them. So many you almost forget how dark the world truly is. You lie back on a grassy rise beside the road, and you watch. And as you watch, something curious happens. The stars seem still. You know they're not, they never are. They wheel overhead like vast, slow dancers in a pattern too large to name. But tonight, they seem to be holding their breath, as if they too are waiting, or remembering. You wonder how many nights like this the people of Linmere saw. How many times they sat on a hill, this hill maybe, and looked at these very stars. They didn't know their names. Most people didn't. But they knew their places. The bright one that rises late. The three in a row. The one that flickers red. Children would have counted them as they fell asleep. Lovers would have whispered beneath them. Shepherds would have traced their paths. And now you do too. The stars are the same, but the watchers are gone. And that's when a strange thought settles into your mind. A quiet, solemn truth somewhere right now. Someone is looking up at these stars and forgetting the stories, forgetting the names, forgetting that there was once a village nestled in a valley where laughter lived and bells rang and bread was baked with care. But forgetting isn't the same as erasing, because the stars are still here, and they saw it all. They watched Linmere grow and stumble and vanish, and they watched you standing in its echo, piecing together its ghost with dust and light and tenderness. They are older than memory, but perhaps they remember for us. You close your eyes, and for a few long moments, all is still. No breeze, no footsteps, no sound, only starlight on your skin. And in that stillness, you feel them again. The people. Not clearly just the faintest sense of presence. A hand reaching, a voice humming, a footstep in the field. Not haunting, not trapped, just remembered. For a little while longer. You open your eyes and whisper their names or the ones you've given them. Thomas, Joan, the widow, the boy with the basket, the old man and his spoons, the woman with the cat, the shepherd who remembered nothing. You say them like a prayer, like a lullaby. And the stars keep watching, as they always have, as they always will. You rise from the hill and walk once more quietly, gently, as if you too are afraid to wake the silence. And above you, the night holds steady. It does not shift. It does not move. It simply shines, as if it too is remembering, just long enough. The path you're following doesn't really exist anymore. Not in the way we usually understand paths. No stones, no ruts. No markers carved into trees, just a faint disturbance in the grass, a sense of direction that your feet seem to know better than your mind. And then you see it, a circle of stone, low to the ground, overgrown, uneven. At first you might think it's nothing, the remains of a fire pit or a cluster of old rocks. But as you step closer, you realize what it is, or what it was. A well, the village well. Though it hasn't drawn water in centuries, it still sits patiently in the grass, like a memory trying to remember itself. You approach slowly. The stones are weathered, some of them cracked down the middle. Moss creeps over the edges like soft hands. Ferns grow in the shade of its lip. There's no rope, no bucket, no beam overhead. Just the mouth open, black and still. You crouch beside it, resting your hand on the rim. The stone is smooth in some places, worn down by touch. Your fingers settle into grooves where countless hands must have leaned before you. Hands carrying wooden pails or guiding children, or just stopping to rest for a moment on the way from one chore to the next. This was once the center of things, not the chapel, not the fields, not even the houses. The well was the heart. People gathered here not just for water, but for company, for updates, for jokes, for whispers. It saw everything. It heard everything. It knew who was pregnant before anyone else, who'd gotten into an argument, who hadn't come home the night before. It knew the village in ways no chronicle ever could. You lean over looking into the darkness. It's hard to say how deep it goes. There's no shimmer of water, not anymore. Only shadows and silence. But not the hollow kind of silence. This silence feels held, heavy, like the deep breath a place takes when no one's listening until now. You try to imagine the people who once leaned where you're leaning now. A woman perhaps early in the morning drawing water while her children still slept. A boy swinging from the rope until his grandmother scolded him. A traveler splashing his face before moving on. A couple pausing here after dark, talking in voices so low only the stars could hear. All of them long gone. And yet in this circle of stone their presence still lingers. You brush away some moss with your sleeve. Underneath there's a faint carving so worn it's almost invisible. A name, a symbol. You can't quite tell, but someone made it, long ago. Maybe as a mark of ownership, maybe for luck, maybe just because they had a moment of quiet and a bit of chalk and wanted to leave something behind. You trace it with your finger, not to understand it, just to acknowledge it. Because someone's hand made that line, and now your hand follows it, across centuries, across forgetting. A breeze stirs the grass. You hear something, not a voice, not a sound, more like a feeling, a shift in the air, a quiet awareness. The well remembers you. You sit down beside it, letting your legs fold beneath you. You rest your back against the stones. The sky above is softening blue, becoming gray light, becoming silver. The first stars tremble faintly overhead. And here in this in-between hour, you begin to understand something. The well may be empty, but it still holds. It holds moments, echoes, fragments. You close your eyes and listen. You hear a splash, laughter, a rope creaking over wood, the thud of footsteps, a voice not quite clear but warm. For a moment you see the village again, the cottages, the garden walls, the crooked fences and lazy hens, all gathered like children around this one deep, dark center. And then the vision fades. You're alone again, but not lonely. You open your eyes. The grass around you sways gently. A cricket chirps. A bird flutters somewhere in the trees. And you realize this well was never meant to last forever. Its purpose wasn't permanence. It was usefulness. It served. It supported. It refreshed. And when the people were gone, it stayed just a little longer. Long enough for one more person, maybe two, to pass and wonder what was this who stood here, who drank from this silence. You stand slowly, your legs stiff from sitting. You press your hand to the stone once more, and you say nothing, because there's nothing to add. Only what's already been felt. You take one last look into the dark mouth. You imagine dropping a stone inside, waiting for the sound to come back. But you don't. Because some echoes aren't meant to return. Some memories are meant to be left resting, not disturbed, just honored. You turn away, walking into the twilight. The well remains behind you, but now it exists in two places, in the field and in you. That's all it needed. That's all it asked. To be seen, to be touched, to be remembered if only for a little while longer. The twilight deepens as you walk, and the well recedes into the distance, not with finality, not with any abrupt parting, but with the quiet, gradual fade of something that has said what it needed to say, and now retreats back into the folds of the earth, content to rest once more in stillness. The road ahead of you isn't really a road at all, not anymore. It's more of a suggestion of direction, a soft groove in the grass and soil that seems to beckon forward, not with any promise of destination, but simply with the silent confidence that it has been walked before. You follow it, not because you expect anything. There are no towns marked on your mental map, no villages known to wait beyond the trees, but because your feet feel committed now, as if they too are caught up in this long forgetting, this gentle recovery of what once was and might never be again. And as you walk, your mind returns to that thought that's been with you all day, the strange, haunting truth that not all disappearances come with fire or war or thunder, that not all endings are written down with ceremony or grief, that some are as soft as footsteps vanishing from a muddy path in the rain. No sound, no struggle, just the slow, steady erasure of life, too quiet to defend itself against time. The trees here are older, the air cooler. You feel it on the back of your neck, that sudden awareness of being watched, not by a person, not by anything with eyes, but by the land itself, as though the earth is slowly waking up to your presence, and wondering, perhaps with surprise, why someone is walking these forgotten lines once more. You come to a place where the path forks, or seems to one trail bending into thicker woods, the other curling toward a rise of mossy stone, and for a moment you stop unsure which is true, or whether either leads anywhere at all. And yet, before you can decide, something catches your eye. Just beyond the curve of the second path, half swallowed by bramble and leaf, is a fragment of wall, not a house, not a ruin, not even a structure you could name, just a low rise of stone laid carefully, almost tenderly, as if someone once believed that even here, even in this unremarkable corner of nowhere, it mattered how things were built. You approach slowly, brushing aside the vines that have claimed it. Your fingers grazing the rough edges of stone, worn down not just by weather, but by centuries of forgetting. There is no sign, no clue as to what it once was, a foundation perhaps, or the edge of a pen, or the base of a shed, where tools were kept and passed from hand to hand. And yet as you stand there in the hush, you begin to realize that this is the end of the road, not because it leads nowhere, but because it leads exactly here to this overlooked place, this overlooked moment where someone once stopped walking, laid down their burden, and decided for reasons now lost to stay. You sit down on the stone carefully, reverently, and you look out at the woods that stretch ahead, dense and unwelcoming, as if to say, here the story turns inward. Here there are no more markers to guide you. The birds have quieted. The breeze has stilled. Even the distant hum of insects feels subdued, as if the whole world is holding its breath. And as the dusk deepens into true evening, you think again of Linmere, of the people who built wells and lit fires and rang bells in chapels that no longer stand, of the women who stitched names into cloth that no one now reads, of the children who memorized the sound of the chapel bell without ever knowing what it meant to be remembered. You wonder if one of them sat here once on this same stone long before the world turned away, not for any grand reason, not to make a mark, but simply because the light was fading and they needed to rest. And maybe they looked at the trees just as you do now. Maybe they asked the same questions. Maybe they too felt the weight of memory without words. You rest your hand on the stone beside you, and it feels surprisingly warm, as if it's been waiting for your touch all along, not to awaken, not to reveal anything, but simply to share its quiet. You stay there a long while, the dark rising around you like a slow tide. No one comes. No sounds disturb the moment, and in the silence something ancient and wordless presses gently against your thoughts. The understanding that not all roads lead to places, that some roads are made only for walking, for remembering, for carrying the shape of things that time has tried to smooth away. Eventually, you rise. You brush the moss from your coat, stretch your limbs, and look once more down the path behind you. There's no sign of where you came from, only the hush of trees. And ahead, nothing certain, just more of the same soft unknown. You smile just a little and begin to walk again, not to arrive, not to discover, but simply to continue. Because sometimes the journey itself is the monument, and in every step you take, someone long lost is walking beside you. The road continues, though it no longer pretends to be a road, not in the way maps demand, not in the way roads are supposed to cut across the land with confidence and direction. This one merely weaves, hesitant, worn soft by time and the patient hands of weather. It bends and breaks, curls back on itself, forgets what it was trying to be. And yet you follow. You follow not because you know where you're going, but because by now you understand that knowing was never the point. This path is a memory, not a plan. It's what's left when footsteps fade, but meaning remains. The trees thin as you walk, and ahead you find yourself entering a clearing wide open and full of wind. It doesn't howl or tear through the grass. It moves gently, insistently, the kind of wind that seems to carry things without ever asking permission. The kind that might have picked up a name once long ago and carried it away, scattering the syllables across the hills until they dissolved into birdsong and soil. You stand still and close your eyes. The wind brushes your cheeks like a hand that once knew your face, though you can't recall the name. And you wonder, really wonder, how many stories were taken this way. Not burned, not buried, simply lifted by the wind and carried beyond the edge of memory. A village without records, a song without verses. A child's laugh caught mid-air and blown out over the fields. You open your eyes and watch the grass ripple golden and soft, bowing to the invisible. It strikes you then that this wind has been here longer than any map, longer than any church, longer than the stones now broken and buried. It passed through Linmere when it still had a name. It moved through its lanes and lifted the hems of aprons and tousled the hair of children playing near the chapel steps. It turned the pages of the priest's little book. It stirred the leaves the day the last door closed. And when the village fell silent, it kept moving. Never cruelly, just forward. Because wind does not mourn. It remembers in motion. It carries instead of clinging. You sit down in the clearing in the soft cradle of wind-warmed grass. The sky is a deepening navy above you, scattered with stars, each one flickering, as if in agreement. Yes, they say, we saw it too. You lie back and listen. No voices, no names, just the breeze. It lifts and falls, brushing past your ears like a secret spoken too quietly to catch. And yet you know it's saying something. You know that somewhere in this place there is the echo of a name you've almost remembered all day. The true name of the village. The one not spoken for centuries. You nearly have it. You can feel it in the shape of your mouth, in the pull of your breath. But then it slips, gone again like everything else. You could chase it if you wanted. You could stand and shout and demand that the wind return what it stole. But you don't. Because now you understand the truth of it. Some names aren't stolen. They're surrendered. Let go like a breath. Given back to the world. And perhaps if the wind carries them far enough, gently enough, they find their way into something new. A name half remembered by a grandmother humming to herself. A melody in a child's dream. A turn of phrase in a poem no one understands, but everyone feels. And so Linmere, or whatever it truly was, still lives. Not where it was, but how it was. In the way people tend to fires. In the way a stranger lifts their hat to a hollow field. In the instinct to pause beside a stone circle even when you don't know why. You sit up slowly, brushing grass from your hands. The wind does not stop, but it does not rush you. It waits, or seems to, for you to rise again and continue your walk the road, now little more than a ribbon of night between you and the stars. And as you walk, you think we are not built to carry everything. We are built to carry just enough. Enough to pass on. Enough to whisper. Enough to remember that once in a green valley there was a place that breathed, a place that laughed, a place that faded. But not completely. Because you are here. Because you listened. Because you let the wind move through you instead of fighting it. Because you know now forgetting is not the opposite of remembering. It is what makes remembering sacred. You pause at the far edge of the clearing. You turn once more to feel the breeze against your skin. And you whisper not the name, for you've lost it again, but something simpler. A word not of loss, but of peace. Go. Let the wind take it. Let it carry the story. Let it find another hilltop, another listener, another quiet evening when someone might ask, was there once a village here? And the wind will know the answer. You've left the clearing now, though. The wind still clings to your shoulders, like an old friend reluctant to part. It doesn't tug or howl, just lingers, as if hoping you might turn back, or perhaps as if it's following you, curious to see how far you'll carry what it once held. The road ahead is narrower, softened by years of growth. It vanishes now and then beneath roots and underbrush. But somehow you don't lose it, because you've begun to understand that the road is not a path through space, but a path through remembrance. And once you've stepped fully into it, it walks with you even when the land itself forgets. Ahead, the trees gather. Not the scattered hedgerows or shy saplings of earlier, but tall ones, now old upright. Watchful, the kind that make you feel as if you've entered someone else's house without knocking. Their trunks rise like pillars, their limbs knit tightly overhead, forming a cathedral of bark and shadow. The air beneath them is still, reverent. You step carefully, not because of fear, but because this place deserves care. It demands it. Here the forest seems not just alive, but aware. The light changes. It thins, deepens, filters through green in shafts, so fine they almost hum. And though no voice greets you, you feel that you are not alone. The trees are speaking. Not in words, they are far older than words, but in their own language, the creak of old limbs, shifting, the rustle of unseen creatures moving through leaf and branch, the faint rhythmic drop of water from a fern's curled edge onto the moss below. You walk slowly now, as if in procession, and you begin to notice things. A carved symbol in the bark of a birch, faded almost to nothing, but not quite. A narrow circle of stones beneath a cedar, overgrown but still walled by human hands. A length of wall swallowed by ivy. These aren't ruins in the grand sense, not castles or abbeys or fallen towers, but something humbler. The remnants of memory that forgot to fade. The bones of places once tended by hands now gone. The outlines of lives not meant for legend, but still sacred in their own way. You reach a clearing smaller than the one before, and in the center, beneath the twisted arms of a yew tree, there sits a stump, cleanly cut. Old, but not rotted. Someone sat here once. Many someones, perhaps. To think or rest or wait, and you understand without needing to ask that this was a place of pause, a place where the villagers came when the burdens of life grew too loud, a place where one could sit and be held by the silence, not in solitude but in company with everything the trees remember. You sit now in their place. You place your hands on your knees. You close your eyes, and you listen. The forest breathes. It exhales slowly, a sound that is not quite wind, not quite breath, but something in between the sound of time passing with kindness. You feel the years here, as if the moss under your feet holds a record of every season, every passing shadow, every word whispered by someone who needed the comfort of a listening world. You don't need to speak. The trees are not asking anything of you. But still, something rises in your chest, not quite a thought, not quite a memory, just an urge to be gentle, to tread lightly, to hold this moment as one holds a bird, not tightly, but with awareness, with care. You open your eyes, and something strange has happened. Though you are sure you have not moved the light around, you have shifted. The trees seem closer, the shadows deeper, the air quieter, not in menace but in invitation, as though the forest has drawn you deeper into its remembering. You step off the stump and continue forward, moving between trees whose bark bears the faint scars of hands whose roots rise in ridges like the outlines of lost roads. You begin to see more the tangle of old fencing here, a broken blade of a plow there half swallowed by roots. The shape of a once straight path now curved and softened by time. And then suddenly a gap in the trees, not a clearing, but a space, an absence. You feel it before you see it. The place where the village ended, the true edge, not marked by wall or gate, but by stillness. The kind of stillness that tells you beyond this point, life was different. Beyond this, the memory fades. Not completely, but enough. You stand at the edge, hand resting on a tree as old as anything you've touched today. And you let yourself feel it. The weight of lives lived. The depth of days lost. The echo of names never spoken aloud in your time, but known deeply now, even without sound. Behind you, the trees do not move. They do not ask for thanks. They do not demand tears. They are content to keep watch, because they have always kept watch over the fields, over the graves, over the hearts that broke quietly and were buried not beneath stones, but beneath leaves, beneath moss, beneath the hush of time itself. You take a breath. The forest breathes with you. And when you step forward, you do so not alone, but with every memory you've gathered wrapped around you, like a cloak woven from story and silence. You walk not to escape forgetting, but to carry it gently, reverently onward. You begin the slow ascent up the long slope, not because there is something waiting at the top. No chapel ruin, no lost bell tower, no forgotten graveyard. But because something inside you, deep and wordless, urges you forward, as if some part of the landscape, perhaps the path itself, remembers that this hill once mattered, even when no one left alive recalls why, and no parchment in any archive tells you what stood there, or who stood there, or what vanished from its summit on the day silence took its first full breath and settled in to stay. The climb is not steep, but it is steady, and the air seems to thicken slightly with each step, as though memory itself becomes heavier. The closer you get to this unnamed place that may have once been a boundary, a border, or perhaps a beginning, a place where stories turned or ended or were quietly allowed to be forgotten, without grief or record, because those who lived them had no expectation that their moments would be carried forward. Only that they were lived, truly lived, with hands in the soil and breath in the air, and a rhythm in the chest that matched the season, the harvest, the bells and the wind. The grass here grows longer, less trimmed by grazing or treading feet, and it ripples around your legs as you pass through it, golden in the light of a sky just beginning to surrender to dusk, while tiny white flowers peek up like dots of memory, trying to stitch themselves back into the present. uncertain whether they belong here, uncertain whether you do, and still you walk. When you reach the top, you stop, and the world opens. Not into grandeur. There is no sweeping view of towers or cities or even distant villages. Only a soft horizon of hills and woods and fields breathing out the day, but into a kind of stillness, so profound, so complete that it feels like even time itself has paused to see what you will do next. There is no marker here, no stone, no altar, not even a crooked post or moss-covered wall to suggest that anything ever stood here at all. But you feel it in the soles of your feet, in the back of your throat, in the way the air seems to hum, with something left unspoken, not a haunting, but a presence so calm and unhurried that you can almost believe it has been waiting here not for centuries, but for you specifically, patiently. As if it knew someone would come someday, not with questions or offerings or desperate prayers for forgotten names, but simply with attention, with reverence, with the quiet ache of someone who understands that loss is not always a tragedy, but can sometimes be a kind of sacred release. You lower yourself into the grass, which welcomes you without complaint, and you stretch your legs and lean back on your hands, looking not at the horizon now, but at the ground, at the very spot where something must have been. A home, a garden, a place where someone once waited for someone else who never arrived. You close your eyes and something comes. Not a vision, not a voice, not even a memory you can describe, just a sensation, like a soft wind brushing across your skin from inside your own chest, carrying with it a name. Not one you've heard before, not even one you could repeat, but a name nonetheless old, slow, made not of letters, but of feeling, of gesture, of a kind of knowledge that is older than writing and deeper than maps, a name made not to be said but to be known. You let it pass through you. You don't try to hold it, because this is not a name to be kept. It is a name to be felt and then released. You breathe, and as you do, the world breathes with you. The sky dims a little further. A star appears above the trees. And in the far-off fields, something stirs, not an animal, perhaps, but a memory rising like mist from the ground, lifting itself just enough to be seen before it disappears, again satisfied. You reach down and press your palm against the earth. It is warm. It is steady. And it holds more stories than any library ever could. You think of all the names you've carried with you, Thomas, the boy with the birds, the widow with the cat, the old man with his spoon carvings, the faceless child at the well, and you realize that even if you forget them one day, they will still exist because you remembered them once. And that is all a story ever asks for, to be remembered once, to be spoken, once to be known once, even in silence, even in solitude. You lie back in the grass, arms stretched, the sky now velvet above you, stars multiplying like memories returning to their places. The name you felt earlier, the one without sound, is still there. It doesn't fade. It just becomes a part of you. You don't need to hold it in your mouth. You hold it in your steps, in your breath, in the way your chest rises and falls beneath this ancient sky. This is where it lives now. Not in records, not in ruins, but in the memory of a memory passed gently from place to person, from soil to soul, from a hill with no monument to a heart that chooses in one slow evening to carry something tender and lost and loved. You rise not quickly, but with care, not because you are tired, but because you are full, and there is weight in being trusted with something that once belonged to so many. You take one last look at the hilltop. There is still nothing to see, and yet it is one of the fullest places you have ever stood. You step down the slope. The grass parts. The stars gather. And the name, the true name, the quiet name, the name beneath the name walks with you. As you descend the far side of the hill, where the earth curves gently downward, and the wind moves more freely now that the trees are behind you. You begin to feel something shift, not in the landscape exactly. For the grass still whispers under your feet, and the stars still hang quietly above like silver seeds dropped across velvet. But within yourself, in that place where memory and imagination meet and begin to blur, that slow-burning center where stories are not simply remembered, but lived again in silence, in steps, in breath. It's there in that inward space that you begin to sense something unusual, not alarming, not loud, but warm, like the faint presence of a fire long since gone cold, and yet somehow still giving off heat, as though what once burned brightly left its heat behind, not in flame or smoke or ash, but in the way it changed the air around it forever. You follow the slope as it curves slightly to the east, your boots brushing against thistles and pale autumn flowers, until you reach a small hollow tucked into the hillside, barely visible from the ridge, shielded by low shrubs and a ring of standing stones no taller than your knee. Stones placed with care long ago, now half buried in moss and age, and if you didn't know to look, you might pass by without ever seeing them, mistaking them for nothing more than the natural bones of the land. But you stop, because the warmth is stronger here. It gathers low to the ground in the grass and under the soil, not like the heat of the sun, not dry or sharp, but old and familiar, like the feeling of sitting beside a fire. Not your own one, you didn't light one that's been burning for others, perhaps for centuries, and yet still leaves room for you to draw close, to extend your hands, and to be warmed. You sit slowly, carefully within the circle of stone, feeling not summoned, but welcomed, not watched, but witnessed, and it occurs to you with a clarity that arrives not as a revelation, but as something you've always known, that this was once a hearth. Not of a house, not of a hall, but of something older, something outside the walls of any dwelling, something shared, a communal fire, the kind lit not for warmth alone, but for gathering, for ritual, for memory, the kind of fire that drew people not just to heat their bones, but to speak, to sing, to listen to, remember aloud the names of their dead, the stories of their birth, the quiet sorrows of the year just past. You close your eyes, and without effort you begin to see them. Not faces, not clearly just shapes, seated. Where you are seated now, their outlines flickering like flame against the darkness, each one bent slightly forward, in the universal pose of storytelling, or listening, or grieving. They do not look at you. They do not need to. Because they are not waiting to be seen, they are waiting to be felt. You take a breath, slow and deep, and as you do, the scent of smoke seems to rise from the soil, faint and impossible, a memory in the air. And you wonder how many voices once rose here too, murmured and laughing and trembling, how many times a flame danced in this circle, throwing sparks up toward the stars, now shining above you. And it strikes you then, not with sorrow, but with a kind of aching beauty, that this was a fire never extinguished. Not truly, because it never needed to be, because it was made not of wood, but of intention, of presence, of the shared weight of silence and memory held between people who knew in their bones that fire is not only for light, but for holding the dark at bay long enough to speak of what might otherwise be lost. You open your eyes. There is no flame before you, no red glow in the stones. And yet it burns. You feel it now in your hands, in the back of your neck, in the way your chest rises and falls, as if you too have become a part of this long circle of keepers, each one passing forward, a warmth that can't be seen but can be trusted, can be shared. You reach out and place your hand on the stone nearest to you, rough, cold, and firm. And though it offers no heat, you feel your fingers tingle slightly, as if the stone remembers how it once cradled flame and still holds the ghost of that warmth inside. You sit there for a long time, The sky turns darker. The stars grow brighter. And in the distance, a fox cries out, not in fear, not in anger, just in the wild language of things that live without needing to be understood. You do not answer. You don't need to. Because this fire, this circle, this moment is not about answers. It is about keeping. You rise slowly, your knees stiff, the moss soft beneath your soles, and you look once more around the hollow, committing it to memory, not the shape of it, not the stones or the shrubs, or the position of the stars above, but the feeling of it, the invisible hearth that still flickers inside you even now, long after the smoke has vanished. You do not say goodbye. You simply turn and walk on, and the fire, the one that never burned and never stopped burning, walks with you, in silence, in stillness, in warmth. You walk for a long time after the fire, not because there is anywhere in particular you mean to go, and not because the land offers you signs or guides or markers to show the way forward, but because walking itself has become its own kind of remembering, its own way of carrying what you've seen, what you've felt, what you've heard, or perhaps only imagined. And with each slow step you take, it is as though the village that no longer stands continues to live not only in the hills and hollows behind you, but also in your body, in your breath, in the soft rhythm of your feet moving gently across the darkened earth. The night is full now, rich and deep, and though the moon has not risen, the stars are more than enough scattered across the sky like flecks of bone in old cloth. They shimmer without hurry or intention, content to be what they are, old and constant and distant, and you feel as though you are not beneath them so much as among them, walking not on earth, but in the quiet folds of some great breathing memory that belongs to more than one world. And then, though you cannot say exactly how much time has passed or how far you have come, you begin to hear something that you know cannot be real. It comes not all at once, but in fragments, soft and slow, arriving first in your bones, before it ever reaches your ears, a vibration, more than a sound, like something felt in a dream you've half forgotten. But then it grows gently and becomes unmistakable. It is the sound of a bell, a single bell. Not loud, not grand, not meant to call armies or announce sermons or mark hours on the clock, but a bell of the old kind, one with a cracked voice and a steady hand, one that speaks not in command, but in remembrance. It rings once, then again, and you stop walking, because you know this bell. Even if you've never heard it before, you know it. This is the bell that once stood in Linmere's chapel, the one they rang for births, for deaths, for saints' days, for the lost, for the returned, the one that tolled when the plague arrived, and again when the priest buried the last child, and again when he closed the parish book with hands that trembled not from age, but from knowing that the names had run out. The bell is not near. It echoes far off and low, as though drifting up from the ground itself or down from a place beyond sky. But it rings, and it keeps ringing. You follow the sound not because you believe you will find it, and not because you expect anything to still be standing, but because something in you needs to be near it to see the place from which that sound is rising, to walk once more into the presence of something that once held all the weight of a village's life, and now rings only for memory, for echo, for the idea that something can disappear and yet still be felt centuries later in the air. The path beneath your feet narrows again, lined by hedgerows that curl like old hands. And though you can't see what lies ahead, the bell continues, slow, deliberate, mournful, but not sad, more like the breath of someone who remembers how to sing even after forgetting the words. And then you see it. At the edge of a grove beneath a crown of yew trees, there stands a single structure, not tall, not whole, not untouched, but there, a bell tower, just the tower, no chapel beside it, no walls, no pews, no windows, no doors. Only the frame of what once held the heart of the village rising into the sky like a memory, trying to take form again, stone by stone. It is broken. The top is jagged, and vines have climbed its base, but the bell is still there. Hung in the hollow of the tower, leaning slightly to one side, its rope long vanished, its iron corroded it should not be able to ring, and yet it does. You stand before it, looking up. The wind is soft, and nothing moves, and the bell impossibly swings. Just once more, just enough for the sound to ripple out into the night, into the fields, into you. You do not step closer. You do not need to. Because you know somehow that this is not a bell that rings for attention, or gathering, or warning. It rings for one reason only. To say we were here. To say someone lived. To say remember us not with names, not with facts, but with presence, with pause, with a moment spent in the quiet listening. You sit at the base of the tower, the grass soft beneath you, the stone cool against your back, and the bell grows quiet. It does not ring again. It doesn't need to. Because now you have heard it. Now you've brought it forward, and perhaps that's all it ever wanted. You look up at the stars again, and for the first time in a long while you feel as though they are looking back, not watching, but listening. Because this moment, this breath, this single ringing bell in the ruins of a place no longer found on any map is a kind of story too. One with no ending. One that you will carry with you long after your footsteps leave this field, long after your thoughts return to roads more known, more marked, more traveled. Because the bell will still ring, not always aloud, but inside you. And when you are quiet, truly quiet, you will hear it again. And it will remember you. You leave the bell tower behind, not as someone who has seen ruins or visited a historic place marked by plaques or fences or interpretation boards, but as someone who has shared silence with something that no longer demands to be seen, that no longer requires its presence to be explained or justified. Something that exists not through preservation or fame, but through the tender endurance of memory itself, through the faint, unwavering weight of having mattered once and that being enough. Your footsteps feel different now, not heavier, not slower, but more deliberate, as though the ground beneath you is no longer just a surface to walk across, but a kind of soft and breathing record, a great book of all that was ever done quietly. A book not written in ink, but in root and mud, in the flattening of grass where a child once lay, looking at clouds in the shallow depressions in the soil, where countless feet once passed on the way to the well, or the fire, or the chapel, and in the places where nothing grows at all, because the grief that sank into the earth there still lingers not out of malice, but simply because some sorrows take longer to leave. The stars are dimming now, not fading, but receding slightly, as if giving space for the earth to speak again, and you listen not with ears exactly, but with your full attention, with the quiet of your body and the stillness of your breath. And slowly, gently, you begin to hear it. Not words, not voices, but the deep old murmur of the soil. It speaks in a language too slow for speech, too soft for sound, but it is there all around you and beneath you, not telling stories the way books do, not laying out causes and effects, kings and dates, but sharing. Instead, what it holds: impressions, echoes, sensations of presence, the memory of weight and warmth, of tears fallen, and fire, ashes pressed down by time and weather, and hoof and seed. You stop walking and kneel in the grass. You place your hand flat on the ground, and you wait. You wait not because you expect a revelation or a vision or some final answer, but because you've learned by now, through field and forest, through bell and wind and water, that the deepest truths are not delivered, but felt. And here on this slope, in this quiet, under this gentle sky, the truth you feel is simple and vast and humbling, that the soil remembers everything, not in order, not with judgment, but wholly. The soil remembers the hands that dug into it season after season, turning it over to make space for food, for growth, for graves, for homes. It remembers the softness of bare feet and the weight of wooden shoes and the trembling knees of the sick. It remembers the fire pits and the sleeping dogs and the dropped cups and the dances that left no music behind, only crushed flowers and laughter drifting away on the wind. It remembers the storms and the prayers and the last embrace between two people who knew that goodbye would not be spoken because it could not be born. And it remembers joy, not the loud kind that demands notice, but the small, daily kind, the satisfaction of bread rising, the warmth of a body beside you, the steadiness of routine, the quiet pleasure of hearing your own name spoken by someone who means it. All of this the soil holds, not to keep it from the world, but to hold it until someone someday cares enough to kneel and press their hand to the ground and say, even without speaking, I see you, I feel you, I remember you. You sit back slowly and you let your fingers run through the earth, through centuries of dust and root and time, and you imagine just for a moment what it would be like if we listened to the ground more often. If instead of digging it for answers, we allowed it to offer its memory in its own slow, sacred rhythm. Perhaps we would learn what it means to endure without being seen. Perhaps we would remember how to be forgotten gently. You lie down in the grass, your cheek against the soil, your eyes half closed, and the whole world narrows to this single, unremarkable hill, this patch of land, with no name, no monument, no claim, and it becomes, in this moment, the most important place you have ever been. Because now you understand that Linmere, or the place once called that, is not gone. It is simply no longer arranged the way we expect a village to be. Its people are scattered in seed and story. Its buildings are layered in dust and moss. Its names are etched in breeze and rain. And its soul, its pulse, still beats beneath the soil, beneath your palm, beneath this very moment. You stay there as long as you need to, until the bell in your mind grows quiet, until the breath of the earth matches your own, until the hush of the land welcomes you fully into its keeping. And when you rise again slowly, gently, with grass pressed into the folds of your clothes and soil in the lines of your hands, you do not brush it off. You let it cling, because now you carry them, all of them. In the creases of your sleeves, in the curve of your spine, in the silent and sacred act of walking on. You walk on now, not because you are eager to reach anything, not because some part of you still holds out hope for an answer, waiting at the end of this winding, memory-worn path, but because walking has become its own kind of ceremony, its own quiet devotion, a rhythm you now understand as not simply movement through space, but movement through memory, through grief, through reverence, through the long and invisible fabric of time that stretches behind every place, even the ones we are told no longer exist. The stars continue their slow wheel above you, steady and unbothered, and the night has grown deeper now, not darker. For the air itself seems to hold a faint light, a kind of silver calm that rests gently on your shoulders, like a shawl handed down from someone you never knew, but who somehow knew you'd be here at this hour, walking with thoughts too full for words, and a heart that beats like a soft bell struck far away. And the silence, oh, the silence has changed. It is not the emptiness you once feared. The kind of silence that feels like forgetting, like absence, like something has been taken and will never be returned. It is fuller now. It breathes. It listens. It surrounds you not like a void, but like a presence, a vast and invisible gathering of every sound that once was the tread of feet on worn soil, the clang of a pail at the well, the call of a mother to her child, the distant bleat of sheep on the hillside, the low murmur of voices preparing bread, the turning of pages in a book by candlelight, the cough of someone ill, the song of someone alone. It is a silence that belongs to them, to the people who lived here, to the ones whose names you tried to hold, and the ones you never even had a chance to know. It is a silence they made with their leaving. Not sudden, not violent, but slow, kind, certain. You stop walking and listen. You listen so deeply, it feels like your whole body is listening, like your bones have ears, like your lungs are not filling with air, but with stories, with fragments, with the residue of lives once carried in laughter and labor and love. You stand at what might once have been a path. There are two low stone walls now crumbled and overgrown, running parallel through the grass. And you imagine just for a moment what it might have been like to walk here centuries ago. Not alone, but among them. You imagine a child skipping ahead, dragging a stick along the wall's edge, scaring up birds from the tall grass. You imagine two friends deep in conversation, their baskets full of herbs, and questions, their faces drawn with care, but not without joy. You imagine a woman pausing, one hand on the stone head, bowed eyes closed for no reason anyone else could see. Only that the air in this place felt a little different that day, like something had shifted, and she wanted to mark it. And now you are standing in her place. The air does feel different. Not colder, not warmer, just older, just more aware. And you realize that perhaps this is what all the walking has been, for not to arrive, but to enter, to step fully into the silence that belonged to them. Not as a visitor, but as a keeper, a witness. You kneel once more, your knees pressing into the grass, and you bow your head, not in prayer exactly, and not in mourning, but in acknowledgement. You are not here to take anything from this silence. You are here to give it room, to share it, to make space in your own heart for something that once filled this land so completely that even now, with every trace of it gone, you can still feel it, like the warmth of a fire that's been out for hours, but the stones around it still hold the heat. You breathe slowly. The earth breathes with you. The silence deepens, and within it, there is nothing more to ask. No last truth to uncover. No secret waiting in the soil. Only this, that you are here. That they were here. That the silence between you is not empty, but full of memory, of presence, of the vast and quiet beauty of a life lived once and remembered now in the hush that holds everything too gentle for language. You stay there a long while, long enough for the wind to rise and fall, long enough for a bird to stir in the trees and settle again, long enough to feel your heart slow and your breath deepen, and your thoughts soften into something that feels more like remembering than thinking, more like feeling than knowing. And then when you are ready, not a moment sooner, you rise. You press your hand once more to the stones. You whisper no name, because the silence already holds them all. And you walk on, not away, but forward, carrying with you the silence that belonged to them, now yours too, not as a burden, but as a gift. And now, as the long night deepens, and the last part of your journey begins to draw closed, not with fanfare or conclusion, but with the quiet turning of a final page in a book made of breath and soil and sky. You walk without urgency, without destination and without question, because you have learned over these slow and tender hours that some paths are not taken in order to arrive but to remember, and that to remember does not always mean to recover what was lost, but rather to sit beside it as it rests, and to say in the gentle way that only silence can hear you are still with me. The road beneath your feet is hardly a road at all now. Barely a crease in the grass, barely a suggestion in the land. And yet it holds you. It carries you as though it knows you've walked long enough to be trusted with what it has to offer. As though it understands that you are no longer here, only to look, but to keep, to carry, to hold what cannot be restored in stone or named in ink, but must instead be passed forward quietly from heart to heart, from body to body, from sleep to dream and back again. The stars are fewer now, dimmed behind high clouds that have drifted across the sky like soft veils, as if even the heavens have decided that this moment, this final turning of memory and step, is best left unlit, undisturbed. A room dimmed before sleep so that nothing startles the soul as it settles into what it knows without needing to explain. You come to a low rise where the wind moves gently through the grass, and the air smells of sweet dampness, of moss, of wood, of old stone, warmed and cooled too many times to count. And you stop there not because something is waiting, but because everything already has been, and there is nothing more that needs to be sought. And so you sit. You rest. You let your body lower slowly to the earth, your legs folded, your hands resting open, your gaze soft, turned, not outward but inward now, where the village lives, where the bell still echoes, where the name beneath the name still stirs like a breath beneath your ribs. You think of them, of all of them, of the woman with her herb basket and her silence, of the boy with his hoop and his wide wind-burned grin, of the man who carved spoons without ever being remembered for them, of the cat that followed the widow without being called, of the child with no name who laughed near the well, of the fire that never burned and the chapel that never stood and the bell that still rang for no one and for everyone. You do not see their faces. You do not need to. You feel them now, in the weight of your shoulders, in the softness of your breath, in the ache that is not pain, but presence, that feeling of having touched something once thought lost, and knowing now that it was never gone, only waiting to be held again. And stranger still, you begin to feel yourself there among them, not as a visitor, not as an outsider peering into history's window, but as part of the fabric, part of the moment. As if your walk through the forest, your pause by the well, your hand on the stone were not acts of witnessing, but of remembering your own part in the story, your own quiet thread woven through the tapestry that no longer hangs in any hall, but still exists intact in the hush between stars and soil. And you remember, or perhaps you simply know that you were there. Not in this life, perhaps. Not in any way a ledger would record. But you were there. You lived. You breathed the air before it thickened with dust. You sang with them and slept and laughed and stepped through the chapel doors when they were new. You rang the bell, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you only listened, but you heard it and you remember it still, and that is enough. Because the bell's voice was never meant only to be heard by those who stood beside it. It was meant to reach across time. And now it rings inside you. You close your eyes. You lie back. The earth accepts your weight without resistance, as though it had always expected this moment, as though it has been holding this spot for you since before the village was named, since before the path was walked, since before you ever knew what it meant to remember what has no record. And the silence returns. But this time it is not between you and them. It is you and them, together. Without word, without name, without end. The clouds drift above. The stars flicker behind them. The night breathes, and in the grass around you, the softest wind moves like a hand across a blanket, folding the world into rest. You stay there until your breath and the breeze are one, until the bell's echo fades into your chest like a lullaby remembered from the edge of sleep, until the village that vanished is no longer a place you sought, but a place you carry. And when at last you rise and walk again, slow, unhurried, gentle, the morning will be near. But for now, in the night, in the quiet, in the hush that holds what was lost and what was found, the truth is simple and whole. You were there, and that is enough.